Hey all, so bit of a different video today. We're going to be going over something a little bit more practical, and that is on how to use a sling. So really useful piece of any medical kit, and generally you will find them in kind of your run-of-the-mill med kits that you might have lying around your car or whatever. First thing to note is if you're digging through the medical kit looking for something that has sling written on it, you're probably going to be looking a while. Generally, the types of slings that you'll generally see, these ones, are what we call triangular bandages. So it's kind of what you're after with these. So there's two different types of sling that we generally tend to use, and we use these for different reasons. The first one we use is what we call a low arm sling. So this is generally for shoulder injuries and anything to do with the upper arm. And this is the more traditional type of sling that you'll see. People with the hand down through here, sling coming across the body through there. And then the other one, which is a little bit less commonly used but is really useful, is what we call a high arm sling. This is where the arm's up through here. So the idea behind both of the slings is mainly to take the weight off the arm. So to make sure that whoever's had their injury doesn't need to sit there kind of supporting their arm either with their other hand or just kind of letting it hang. That's not particularly fun if you've got a dislocated shoulder, if you've broken your collarbone or something like that. The weight of the arm dragging that down can be very painful, and getting things in a sling can help an awful lot with that. It's incredibly important for a low arm sling. For a high arm sling, we're generally using this with wrist or hand injuries. If you remember back to our RICE video, where we had rest, ice, compression and elevation, high arm sling is a really good way for us to elevate that injured wrist, injured hand, injured fingers. Getting that up above the shoulder, up above the heart, letting that blood drain out a little bit and just helps a lot with the swelling, quite a bit with the pain. And it's quite a comfortable position for someone who's injured the wrist to rest that hand in until we can get them into hospital or into x-rays or whatever else we might need to do. Before we go about how to start using our triangular bandage, easiest way to form a sling, especially if you're on a rugby field or something like that, is just use a jersey. So having someone with the hand either here or across the body and just pulling the jersey up over that and having them hold it a little bit. It's not a permanent fix, obviously, but in terms of just getting someone off the field and something like that, especially if you're not that confident with putting a sling on and you might have to play around a little bit with it, jersey works just fine for walking someone 20-30 meters. A lot better than nothing, a lot better than letting the arm just hang, and it's super easy to do. You're not going to mess this one up. So going on to our triangular bandage. So after you've unwrapped this, probably going to look a little bit confusing. Quite often people take one out and assume it's kind of already going to be a sling shape and you just kind of put it on. Realistically you do, they're not actually that hard, but when you're greeted with this, it can be a little bit daunting. There's a little trick that we use to make things an awful lot easier to remember and to use the sling properly. What you want to be doing, so if you look, we've got this long triangle. We want to find the short corner, so we've got long corners through here, and then we've got this short 90-degree corner through here. First thing you do, you get the sling down, tie a knot in this corner. So this knot gives you a really useful point of reference for using the sling in the future. Basically anything that we're going to do with the sling from here, this knot goes around the elbow. These long bits are the bits that you end up tying up at the end. Just having a point of reference with the sling makes things an awful lot easier. They do generally come with safety pins, which can be useful again if you've got someone even much larger or much smaller than average. You can kind of pin things up at the end and tidy things up a little bit, but you really don't want to have to be kind of faffing around trying to secure things with safety pins before you've got the person nice and secure up there. So using the knot there helps that elbow stop slipping out the back. Again, gives you a really good point of reference. You don't have to use the safety pins to do the same thing. It does make things an awful lot easier. So, got a quick video going over exactly how to do each of those slings, the low arm and the high arm slings. We'll talk you through that as we're going, and then go from there.
So for our broad arm sling, finding the corner again of this bandage, tying a knot in it. We want this sitting underneath the elbow. This gives us a fantastic point of reference and makes things an awful lot easier going forwards. From here, under the elbow, Our back long corner goes underneath the arm and around the opposite shoulder, around the neck. Our other long side comes over the same shoulder, again around the neck, and tying these nice and securely back through here. Make sure we've got a good knot here. Last thing we want to do is the sling coming undone while someone's trying to support this arm. But nice and simple, and yeah. For our other high arm sling, start the patient with the hand up on the opposite shoulder. Knot goes again underneath that elbow. Leading edge follows the line of the arm over the opposite shoulder. Other side comes round underneath the armpits. And again, meet behind the neck. Tie this again nice and securely. And we have our high arm sling.
So hopefully those have helped a little with demystifying how to use the sling. Just quickly going to go over what we want to be doing after this. So, your injured player on the field has had a shoulder dislocation. You've done an incredibly professional and very, very clean looking sling, and now they're just sort of sitting on the sideline with their arm in a sling. Anything that we need to be putting in a sling, really, really good idea to be getting this checked. Whether it's going to ED, going to the hospital, or if it's not incredibly painful and things like that, then we want to be coming in to see your physio pretty soon. Things like shoulder dislocations, we really want to get those ideally back in as soon as we can. It's not a great idea unless you really know what you're doing to try and relocate those on the side of the field. Even a lot of physios are not that comfortable what we call reducing, which is relocating the shoulders. So if you're not sure what you're doing, just leave it to the experts. But they can be pretty easy to get back in once you're in hospital, or in the physio clinic if you somehow manage to get in here with a dislocated shoulder. And they're a lot more comfortable once they're in. So those we want to get sorted as soon as we possibly can. Same with anything that looks like it might be fractured collarbone, which we can quite often see. Often those are quite obvious. We'll have a big step in the collarbone, something like that. Again, get those straight to hospital. Don't come to us with those ones, but we can't do much about that. We're just going to send you straight to hospital as well. They will ideally also replace the sling with something a little bit easier to put on and a little bit more comfortable. So slings are absolutely fantastic for the short term, but they're not something we want to be using long term at all. Especially once you're coming in to see us, we want to get that shoulder moving as much as we can, get things going, get it useful and functional again, and we want as little time in the sling as possible. But first couple of days after an injury, it's not a bad idea, especially if it's a more major shoulder injury or something. Good idea to just have it in the sling, even if it's just to stop people reaching out and grabbing things, because that's quite an instinctive thing that people will do even with an injury. Say if you're drinking at the table, you knock something off with your injured arm, you go out and reach for it, and you've got an injured collarbone, injured shoulder, something like that, you're going to hurt this quite a lot, and it's not often something you can really plan for. Having that in a sling is actually just a really good way to stop that kind of stuff from happening. Also stops you bumping into things. It's a little bit like crutches. It's almost a bit of a warning to people around you. So if you happen to walk through a crowd, something like that, if you're in a sling, you'll tend to find people give you a little bit more room. Whereas if you're just trying to sort of protect the shoulder, it's not as it's not a big sort of white flag that's sitting around you, sort of letting people know that's hey, try not to bump me. So really, really useful for the first few days, but it is really important that that you guys come in, let us have a look at especially shoulder injuries. If we can get onto shoulders really quickly, we can often sort them out very, very fast. But if not, they do tend to linger around quite a while. Again, we can sort them out quickly, but they can take quite a while to sort of sort themselves out. So it can save you an awful lot of pain in the long run if you, again, come in and see us nice and promptly. It's really, really easy for us to sort. Thanks again for watching. We'll continue our series with the focus more on injury management next week. Still considering what we might be doing, potentially look at different types of strapping tape and maybe a couple of different strapping techniques, but we'll see how things go. Right, thanks very much guys, and we'll see you next week.